What philosophical issue or question interests you the most at this point in time? And I will answer this in two steps. The first step will be my academic answer, and then my second answer will be my personal answer, which is where I think ice cream will come in. So, academically, I am currently most interested in the metaphysics of dualities in string theory, and particularly with regard to the ADS-CFT correspondence, ADS-CFT being the anti-de Sitter space conformal field theory correspondence, which is something that the illustrious physicist Juan Maldacena came up with in the late 90s, and we did an episode somewhere in the late hundreds about it back then. But you might want to look at that if you want to hear more about what the anti-de Sitter, the ADS-CFT correspondence is. But roughly, dualities, which are not isolated to string theory but are a broader physical issue, are mathematical correspondences between theories where the theories give different descriptions of the world, but they are nonetheless empirically indistinguishable from one another. So, for instance, in the case of string theory, in addition to the four dimensions of space and time that we all love, string theory has these microscopic, tiny, curled up dimensions, and different theories or different descriptions of reality to duals. These compactified dimensions can have different radii or different topologies, and yet the two theories can be equivalent. And this is just very, I don't know. I've been using, I don't know if I've used the word spooky, but it raises a lot of metaphysical issues. And I mentioned that I'm particularly interested in the ADS-CFT correspondence, which, without getting into too much detail here, leads many string theorists to believe that we live in a hologram. So what that means is that they think that there is a boundary to our universe. There is a theory of physics that describes everything on that boundary. Then there is a theory that describes everything in the bulk, so all of this stuff that we experience, and that it is the boundary that is fundamental. And speaking metaphorically or analogically, the idea is with a hologram is you have a two-dimensional piece of plastic, it's etched, you shine a light on it, and out comes this three-dimensional image. And the idea here would be that we're something like a projection in the bulk from the boundary. And I find this question to be very interesting. So that's the issue that I'm researching and writing about and thinking about. Personally, and this is where the ice cream comes in, I have been thinking a lot about metaethics and how I ought to live my life. I have said a little bit about metaethics, but again, the first order, here, I think about this kind of as a pyramid. At the bottom of the pyramid, the biggest block of the pyramid is metaethics. And metaethics is concerned with moral facts, whether there are any, what they might be like, how we might know about them. Then on top of that, the next level of the pyramid would be theoretical ethics. So this is where you would have moral theories like utilitarianism or Kantianism, something like that. And then maybe I should add more explicitly that in the abstract, tell you how you ought to act. Then on top of that, at the top of the pyramid, you have applied ethics, where you're taking these normative theories and applying them to real world situations. So, for instance, to give a concrete example, I interviewed Peter Singer recently. You may have seen that episode. He said that he believes that there are moral facts. His epistemology for these moral facts is that he has a deep gut intuition that suffering is bad and we have an obligation to alleviate that suffering. Then his normative theory that comes from this is hedonistic utilitarianism. So, what is right is to improve well being and alleviate suffering. And then at the applied level, he looks at questions like animal welfare or global poverty and assesses the situation and does whatever he thinks is best to improve those conditions. So, what I have been thinking about is the fact that I do not believe that there are any such moral facts. So, the base of my pyramid is just kind of not there. So, I'm kind of in this quandary where I have all of these very strong feelings, like about not kicking cats, for instance, but I don't think that they're grounded in any sort of deep moral fact. It's just a matter of how I'm wired. And the issue is that I really am wired in such a way that the suffering of animals causes me great pain just to think about or to know that I'm contributing to it. So, for that reason, I'm currently eating vegan with the exception of meat that I mentioned in this episode with Peter, but I'll mention it again. There's an operation called Maui Nui Venison in Hawaii where in Maui there are thousands upon thousands of invasive axis deer that are the descendants of 5 or a dozen deer given by the Emperor of Japan to the King of Hawaii 100 or 200 years ago, and they're ravaging the environment. And so this operation has the authority to ethically, and I guess so much as one can do this, or let me say humanely, and so much as one can humanely hunt and slaughter deer and then sell the meat. And in my mind, at least, these animals are living wild and happy lives. And most importantly, they would be slaughtered and killed otherwise. So I'm eating that meat, but otherwise, I'm not eating meat or animal products at all as I ponder these issues because I very much want to live a consistent life. I think that's important for having self-esteem and integrity. So I'm not eating ice cream at all these days, and this is why personally metaethics and how I ought to live are very much on my mind.